football World Cup preparations. Then secondly, we should go on to like actually discussing the selection, the team national. Maybe you can talk about some of the players and stuff like that. You know, people to keep an eye out for. You know, like someone who people's first. Is there any players that are having their first World Cup that we should keep an eye on? Things like that.
Hmm.
And then we can move it into the for the final topic. We could perhaps move it into the elite conversation with the LS Jeans scandal.
That's fine.
Something like that.
Alice Jinx scandal. I love that.
Yeah. Can in the preparations topic, like I saw that you guys had put down Corinthians. Are we going to talk about Cuiabá also and the death in the stadium, or you guys want to focus more on Itaquerão?
I think we could do. I was in Itaquerão yesterday, so I could share some of the impressions I have there.
Okay.
But I think we could talk about preparations
Overall.
overall. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Then it includes Rio, it includes the communications, it includes very other topics that could be of interest, and I
All
think
right.
that's probably
Perfect.
best. And then I can engage. You're based in Rio, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have two Rio and two São Paulo. Actually, three Rio, and it's good to have you on board. Please forgive if I make any mistakes. We're going to record that many times, just to make it sure. I mean, the parts I speak, and then we just follow with the discussions, and that's how we've done in the last 3 weeks. We're still adapting, but it's worked so far, and we're improving hopefully by the week. Should we kick
All right.
off?
Yeah,
Perfect.
let's go.
Let me just before we kick off. Let me just grab my computer charger 2 seconds because I'm afraid my
No
computer's
problem.
gonna die in the middle of this. I'll be 2 seconds.
No
Me too,
problem.
me too. Let me do the same.
Hmm.
We still don't have an intro music, is that right?
Oi? Acho que eles saíram. A música de fechada?
Yeah, we don't have one.
A gente pensa, começou com que bonito é, vai terminar com o papo da
Okay,
elite.
I'm back here. Perfect.
E se for aquela princesinha do Seu Jorge?
Sério? Não, tudo bem.
É só porque é elite mesmo. Mas,
Ok.
enfim.
Ok, não.
Mas não precisa ser não, pode ser outra.
Não, sabe qual é a boa? Putz, agora eu não sei se eu vou achar. Madame não gosta que ninguém sambe.
Muito bom. Muito bom.
Adorable. Deixa eu ver se eu acho aqui.
How long have you been in Brazil for?
On and off, I've been here for almost 7 years. I got here,
Ah,
yeah, I got here in 2007 with AP, and I was working
uhum.
with AP from 2007 to 2012, and then that's when I left for New York for a year, and then I've been back on and off for the past year and a half or so.
I see. Just like Rachel Blakehouse.
It's like Rachel Blakehouse.
Fair enough.
It seems like there's a few of us that do this whole on and off thing now, the seasonal Rio. But I mean, I've been here all year. I've been in New York for 2 weeks this year.
Ouch. And are you
Yeah.
going back after the World Cup or are you staying till the Olympics?
I mean, I'm gonna go back and forth. Like, I gotta go back to New York after the World Cup, and then I'll be back for the elections, and because I'm
Ouch.
working with a bunch of different people now. Like, because I left AP in 2012, and I started freelancing
Mm-hmm.
after I went to grad school, and then I freelanced after grad school.
Oh, good. And you were born in Venezuela, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was born
Okay.
in Caracas.
How fun was that?
I mean, back then it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't too bad when I lived in Caracas, but now obviously it's changed a lot.
I suppose. But
Yeah,
that's
no,
good.
but it's still an interesting place regardless. Like, with everything that happens, the good and the bad, it seems to be an interesting place.
Hmm. And it seems that many reporters coming to Brazil at this moment, they are, I mean, not many, but a few of them were very high-ranked ones, like Weir Davis and a few others. They are basically coming from Venezuela as well, so they are taking
Yeah.
another
Simon
side of,
also, Simon Romero was in Venezuela before
yeah,
he came, and
exactly.
yeah. And a
And
lot of China, a lot of people who were in China, who were in Asia are also coming here.
mhm. Jonathan Wheatley. No,
Yeah.
yeah.
Jonathan Watts. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting to see that it's either the BRIC relation or it's the South American leftist relation. It's
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
it's
I was in
interesting.
DC. I was in Washington before I came, so I don't know how I ended up here. I came before all this stuff started happening.
Yeah, and 2007 was pretty much the year in which Brazil started developing more quickly, I would say, because the social
Uh-huh.
programs were about well, they were fixed by then. They were pretty much settled,
Yeah.
and growth started getting a little more intense. And yeah, I remember a
Yeah.
lot from that year.
I arrived when the Pope came, when
Oh
Benedict
yeah,
came. I was
were
in
you,
Sao Paulo.
so was I. We're covering him as well.
Yeah.
Oh, so was I. I
And
was
that's
working
when
at
I moved
Reuters
to
then.
Brazil. Yeah.
Ó, eu achei pra que discutir com o Madame aqui numas versões ao vivo do João Gilberto.
Ótimo, sensacional.
Se eu fico sempre com a mesma pergunta, se a gente vai ser pressionado pelo ECAD, mas
Né, podcast no blog? Acho que não. A gente processa eles antes.
tá bom.
Sam, are you alive?
Yeah, just about.
Ah, good. Let us know when we can kick off.
Sam, I'm going to send you this archive in the in the Google Drive. Okay,
Sure.
just a second.
Ah. So it's going to be 2 very intense months. No, 2.5. I can barely remember when I had my last holiday, my last weekend, my last
I
whatever.
know. I know. I worked this whole weekend. And then I had a
Yeah.
wedding. I had a wedding last night, so I spent the whole day in Rocinha. I got in at 6, and then I had to go to a wedding in like Gavia, and it was a bit bizarre, the contrast of the two worlds that were right next to each other, and the very different experience in both of
I
these.
suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. And are you going to be based in Rio till the end of the World Cup as well? Or are you going to travel around?
No, I'm going to be traveling around during the World Cup. I mean, right now, my schedule for the World Cup, I think I'm going to be doing Natal, Fortaleza, Recife, BH, and Brasilia.
No Manaus.
No Manaus.
Ah, okay. I suppose
I would
you're
have
going
liked
to
it.
watch. Yeah, a
Yeah, I thought
rumble,
it would have been interesting.
as the British say, the rumble in the jungle. It would. It's US against Portugal there, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to Belo Horizonte, Brasilia, and Salvador, and then Rio for the final and the semifinals in São Paulo. But it's bizarre. It seems that most people were spending too much on Crimea, spending too much on the missing plane, and they're all flocking into Brazil now and say, "Well, do you have 2 months to work for us?" I said, "No."
I know.
Yeah. So unless we can split ourselves in 5 or 6 parts.
I know. I mean, I got this email the other day. Somebody was looking to do a documentary in Brazil from July 8th. They think he wants to come like July 8th to the 17th. And I'm like, what do you think you're going to be able to film besides people in the street watching the games those days? Like, nothing's going to be working. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you've been in 2010 World Cup in Brazil, I suppose.
I was
You
here
were here,
Yeah, I was here in 2010.
so you could see how it goes in a way. I mean, nothing goes.
Everything shuts down.
Yeah, but I have to say, back in 2006, I was writing stock market wrap-ups for Reuters, and when we were doing Europe stock markets, European stock markets, it would be something like this. Well, the Spanish IBEX just worked for half day because Spain was playing in the World Cup, and Germany's DAX went up 2% because traders were too excited about Germany winning in the World Cup. So it seems that the hype is, except for the US, which is gradually getting in the mood, and for baseball loving countries as well. But it gets upset. It is very intense everywhere, I would say.
Yeah.
Are we good, Sam?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. So I'll just start reading the intro then. And should I put the name of the song in the beginning?
Yeah. So I put it in the script. So Are we recording already or?
Yes, we're
Okay.
recording already.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. Oi, pessoal. Welcome to the third edition of the Brazil podcast. I am Mauricio Savarese, an independent journalist from São Paulo. I think there was some noise. I'll do it again.
Sure.
Oi, pessoal. Welcome to the third edition of the Brazil podcast. I am Mauricio Savarese, an independent journalist from São Paulo. I'm a former Reuters Brazil correspondent, and I used to work for UOL, Brazil's biggest online website. I'm a former Reuters Brazil correspondent, and also used to work for UOL, Brazil's biggest online news site. I also run a blog called The Brazilian Operating in This Area. The Brazil podcast brings together foreign and domestic journalists and experts for a weekly discussion covering all of the biggest news from Brazil. The Brazil podcast brings together foreign and domestic journalists. The Brazil podcast brings together foreign and domestic journalists. No, there's something wrong here. Just a sec. Let's take this out. The Brazil podcast brings together foreign and domestic journalists for a weekly discussion covering all. The Brazil podcast brings together foreign and domestic journalists for a weekly discussion covering all of the biggest news from Brazil. This week's guests are Flora Charner, a multimedia journalist based in New York and Rio de Janeiro. Hi, Flora.
Hi, Mauricio.
Leonardo Macari, a film scholar based in Rio. Hello, Leo.
Oi, Maurício.
Hello, Leo.
Hello, Maurício.
Mas eu vou continuar. Our producer is Sam Cowie, a journalist based in Rio de Janeiro.
Hi, Maurizio.
Welcome, guys, to the third edition of the Brazil podcast. Our intro tune this week is Que Bonito É, by Valdir Calmon. Léo, tudo bem chamar de Que Bonito É, né? Eu sei que é na cadência do samba, mas enfim, né? Léo?
Sim, tudo bem, claro.
Tudo bem. Our intro tune this week is Que Bonito É, by Valdir Calmon. Eu vou acrescentar mais uma frase. It is the Chariots of Fire of Brazilian football. And it is true. It is true. It's the Chariots of Fire of Brazilian football. So, this week's first topic is the run-up to the World Cup. We are now just 30 days away from Brazil hosting its first World Cup since 1950. Is that all right, Sam? Could you listen to it well, or should I?
That's good. No, that's good. That's good. Just feel free to talk.
That's fine. So just on Saturday, I was at the Corinthians Arena in São Paulo. I could see there's loads of things to do in the surroundings. One of the engineers told me that it will be all set for the opener on June the 13th, Brazil versus June the 12th. An engineer told me it will all be ready for June the 12th when Brazil plays Croatia in the World Cup opener. But anyone walking around the surroundings doesn't feel as confident. Although the inside looks pretty good, the outside is of reasonable concern. I would like to open the discussion with you guys. 30 days to the World Cup. What's your biggest concern? What's your biggest concern for these 30 days? Is that the stadia? Is it the stadia? Is it the communications? Is it the airports? How do you fare Brazil's preparations in the last 2 years and a half, and in these 30 days that remain very interesting?
I think that the airports and the communications part is going to be a big problem. I think that the stadiums in the end will come out. They'll look beautiful on television. The games will be played. But I think that people are going to have a lot of trouble reaching these stadiums by plane, and then they're going to have a lot of trouble communicating with each other once they're in these stadiums. Because, you know, as we all know, living here, we already have cell phone problems on normal days. You already have to stand in line, especially in Guarulhos Airport. I think that Guarulhos is going to have a lot of issues with traffic coming in and out. Last time I traveled out of Guarulhos was a couple of weeks ago, and it was a Sunday night. There was no holiday. There was no major reason for delays, and it took me 2.5 hours to get through security. Mm-hmm. And it's because they were doing all this stuff with hiring the third, like a third-party company to do the Polícia Federal thing, and they're trying to do all these reforms where they're changing in these things to bring in bilingual workers. And I just think that all these last-minute changes that they're trying to do are ultimately going to end up causing a lot of delays and causing a lot of discomfort for people who probably are not planning their trips with 2 or 3 days in advance to get to these games in order to not miss their matches.
So for Flora, it is communications and airports. Do you guys think there's another worry in this last 30 days for the World Cup?
I agree with Flora. I think it's those are the main problem areas.
I was just reading that just a few seconds ago that Viracopos Airport, which is in Campinas, very close to São Paulo, it was mostly a cargo airport, but it was taking more and more passengers, and they were building another terminal to use during the World Cup, and they said, surprise, surprise, that it's not going to be finished in time, and they're not going to use the terminal as well. So since Guarulhos Airport was already a focus of concern, I suppose, just for the fact that Viracopos is not going to handle part of that traffic, that's going to be an even bigger load for Guarulhos as well. Guys, communications especially were especially difficult in São Paulo for the opener. Sorry, I have to say that again. Communications were already difficult in São Paulo yesterday for the friendly. Corinthians hosted old players and new players just to kick off the new stadium, just to start the works there. Do you think that if we feel that impact in São Paulo and Rio, how do you fear the impact on communications is going to be in other regions of the country, such as the Northeast and the North, which have a tradition of difficulties?
I think it's going to be relative because I don't think you're going to have the same number of fans going to the North and the Northeast for a start. I think that Rio and Sao Paulo particularly are going to really bear the brunt of these communication difficulties and of the transport difficulties, I believe.
Okay. So should we go for the football then?
No. Let's keep on talking. We're just getting into this now. Let's see if we can. If it's just a few more questions regarding this topic. We're running at about. Ideally we were looking for about 5 minutes of footage for each topic.
Okay.
Generally, that works out as about 15 minutes of conversation once we've made all the edits.
That's
and
fine.
stuff. So yeah, let's continue. Let's continue.
I think that I think mobility is also going to be a big issue, especially for the World Cup opener in Sao Paulo, because of the location of the stadium and just the congestion that Sao Paulo as a city has usually. I think that mobility is going to be another issue, and just figuring out how public transportation is going to work in a lot of these cities, how there's going to be the restrictions of traffic, where people are going to be able to come and go, how they're going to be able to move around. Because I know that during the Confederations Cup, there were some issues that people faced and that they were able to kind of sort it out for the most part. But I think that with this new stadium and with kind of just also having now this presence, if the Copa do Povo and this like camp that's setting up around the stadium also continues, which I wanted to ask you, Mauricio, how that was looking, because I haven't been to Sao Paulo since they set up, and how close to the stadium are they, and do you think that they're going to be around still by the time the World Cup starts?
I think they might be around, but the thing is, it's about 5 kilometers away from the stadium. You can see the stadium from the places where they've set up the tents, but it's quite a walk to go there. But I suppose people who are in this camp, once they want to get around, they're going to the subway station, which is just in front of the stadium, and there are not many buses in Itaquera just to walk around the neighborhood. So you basically have to go to the terminal, and you have to go to the metro station. And I suppose they can remain there for the World Cup. It wouldn't be very much of a problem because it's actually a reasonably distant area of the stadium. But I suppose City Hall in São Paulo is. I've read a couple of reports saying that City Hall in São Paulo is already negotiating an agreement with them so they can actually move into a project which is in deeper Itaquera. It is the same place where the other favela, which was located much closer to the stadium. People who were living in that favela, they were taken to this other project as well. So it seems that there might be an agreement in the next few days. But about mobility in the São Paulo Stadium, one thing I can say for sure is that when Ronaldo visited the venue a couple of weeks ago, there were loads of traffic issues there. The road is not very wide, So you just have 2 lanes to get into the stadium. Radial Leste, which covers a big part of the east zone of São Paulo, usually has 3 lanes at least, and in this part of the city, it has just 2. So it's going to cram loads of people in the end. I could see that on Saturday they were trying to understand how the traffic works, but still signs were very confusing. I could see that it was an event for about 20,000 people, and still they found major issues with traffic in the region. Next week, Corinthians is playing Figueirense for the Brazilian Championship, and that's a match to which they expect to get about 50,000 supporters, and that should be more interesting as a test. I suppose they have the whole week just to make at least some improvements. So that's the big one. We can see if it doesn't get as chaotic as it seemed to be in the end of the Saturday. I know that for a fact I can ask you guys in Rio, because you go to the Maracanã Stadium very often. Sam and Leo, there are no parking lots near the Maracanã Stadium, and mobility, although there is a subway station there very close to the Maracanã, it's also an issue in Rio, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's problematic, and most of the time people park their cars in the university right across from the Maracanã Stadium. But this, I assume it won't be available for the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that there's plans to restrict traffic pretty strictly around the Maracanã. I think that there's going to be a pretty wide perimeter. I'm not sure if the government put out the numbers of how wide the perimeter that they're going to limit traffic for the Maracanã is going to be. But usually during like big game days, for example, like today during the Fla-Flu that they had, they have 2 subway stops that they use kind of for rival teams, which I'm sure they'll be operating with, and then they have a Supervia stop also near the Maracanã. So I think that they're going to be trying to limit any sort of car traffic to the minimum during game days in Rio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing that I think another thing that's going to play a role in all this, to my impressions, that in South Africa, the stadia were very empty during the competition, and that's why they didn't have massive problems with people, not having any subways, just using vans to go to the stadium. If I'm not mistaken, only Johannesburg, they were the only ones to have a train system operating during the World Cup, and it was just inaugurated in the middle of the World Cup. The other cities, they had major issues with that as well. But still, when you had people going to the stadium, you didn't have as many as we're going to see in the Brazilian stadium. The Brazilian stadium, they're pretty much sold out for most of the matches. So since traffic is a very Brazilian thing, and in São Paulo more than in any other city, I reckon there's going to be loads of news about traffic in these cities, no matter how good, no matter how well the subway works during these days. One thing to bear in mind is that the stadium in São Paulo, it sits right across from the subway station. But that subway station, bizarrely, is not going to be working during the World Cup, because for security reasons they decided that the supporters should hop off in the station before this one. So they should walk about 2 or 3 kilometers just to get to the stadium, and that's going to be interesting to see. Loads of people just walking to the Itaquerão, and loads of traffic as well in one of the most crowded avenues in São Paulo. It's going to be very interesting. Have any of you guys visited any other cities but Rio and São Paulo for games as well?
I've been to the other cities. I haven't been there during game days, but I've done I had to do city profiles in Natal and in Fortaleza, and I was in Curitiba with all the stadium stuff there, but I wasn't in any of these game days when they were having them with the big matches. Or I was there for Confederations Cup, but I haven't been there since Confederations Cup. But I think that there's concern about Recife and the accessibility of the stadium in Recife, because I guess during the Confederations Cup, I think it was the Uruguayan team that almost missed one of their games because they got stuck in traffic trying to get from their hotel to the Recife stadium. Mm-hmm. And I think that the rest of them, for example, like Natal's stadium is pretty centrally located, and Fortaleza's is as well. I haven't been to Cuiabá, which is now the stadium that has kind of come back into the news with this recent death.
From the ones I know Brasilia. Well, it is a walkable distance from the bus terminal there, but it's quite a walk. It's a difficult city to get around, but it is doable. In Minas Gerais, in Belo Horizonte, and all you need to do is to take a bus, and there are many buses to the Mineirão Stadium, so it should work reasonably well. Uh, Porto Alegre, they have loads of works in the surroundings, so I don't know how the transport system is going to operate on that. And they are mostly they're bus drivers in Porto Alegre and train drivers in Porto Alegre love to go on strike at the worst moments, and I wouldn't rule that out for the World Cup. And Salvador, I've been
Not
there a few
unlike
times.
France. Not
Nothing
unlike
like France.
France.
No, but these guys are all concours, aren't they? And
Yeah, au concours is is the right expression for that.
yeah, and Salvador, it's probably going to be a little tricky because the arena was remodeled, but the surroundings are also very difficult to get to. You can get there by bus, but if you're not getting there by bus, you're going to have loads of trouble. I've been there in a couple of matches, and it took me about 2 hours just to leave the stadium. I don't know if they made any changes because that was in 2012, but let's hope for the best in a way. Should we go to football then?
Yeah, let's move on to football. Yeah, yeah, let's get to the national selection. Yeah.
Okay, talking about preparations for the World Cup and something that is not related to constructions at all. Coach Luis Felipe Scolari just picked his selection on Wednesday. On Wednesday? Was it on Wednesday?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, good.
that's one thing.
So Coach Luis Felipe Scolari picked his selection on Wednesday, and he made no surprises, no big surprises for the Brazil team in the World Cup. So Leonardo, you've seen more World Cups than any of us. What do you make of this?
Yeah. I don't remember any time that went smoother for a coach. I mean, he was not questioned about his peaks, and the last time, I don't know if you remember this, but you of course remember that, Mauricio, that Scolari was I mean, there was this claimer for Romário, and
2002.
yeah, exactly. And Scolari was adamant not to call him. So that there was this back and forth thing with him, and he being Romario's base. So it was hectic for Scolari that time. And now it seems smoother as never as I remember. I really don't remember any time being that easy for a coach.
Was it smooth because was it smooth because Brazilian players now aren't that special anymore, or was it smooth because these picks were obvious?
I think there's some truth to that. I don't. I don't think this. I don't think that his pickup, his squad, has that many problems, and you can think about a player or two that you think it's better than that Scolari's choices, but at the same time, it's hard to argue when when the most problematic choice is the fourth fullback or something like that. So um, it's nothing to worry about. But at the same time, there is some truth to that. Brazilian players are not that special anymore. We don't have that many. We don't have that. We used to be so proud about this oh, we have players to make 4 or 5 squads, and that's not true anymore.
Exactly. Flora, Sam, I would like to ask you one thing specifically about Brazilian players that have been in the limelight for a long, long time, such as Ronaldinho and Kaká and Ronaldo, but more specifically about Ronaldinho and Kaká because they are still active. Have you seen in the international media many people questioning why these two were not in the selection? Because in Brazil it was pretty obvious for us that they didn't deserve to be there. But I've heard a few international friends saying, well, why is not Ronaldinho there and why is not Kaká there? Did you get that as well?
Yeah, no, I got that impression. Well, I think people were also curious about Robinho and why Robinho had also been left out. But I don't know if it's in a way because of their experience already and because they're already more like veteran players and that this is kind of a way of retiring their jerseys from the national scene now before this last World Cup. I mean, I think that because this, Kaká and Robinho and Ronaldinho have had such sort of big careers in the European football leagues that I think that that's why their names are probably more well known and more expected to have been on this national team. And because of just the last time Brazil won the World Cup, they were pretty influential in that match or in that whole round of World Cup games. And but I guess in football you reach a certain age and you reach a certain stage in your career where it's time to make room for new talent and for other talent. I think that there's a lot of expectation around Thiago Silva and that there's a lot of expectation obviously around Neymar, who's going to have a lot of pressure because he's kind of the player now that people look at that represents what the big squad of Brazilian players used to represent 8 years ago. So I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure on Neymar to kind of be that squad in this person in a way. But I think that, as you guys said, that from what I've heard, from what I've read here, and from my journalist friends who cover sports more closely here, that it was pretty smooth and pretty predictable selection.
Mm-hmm. Sam, do you have anything to add?
No, not really, no, but it will be interesting to see the pressure on Neymar and how he reacts to the pressure. Yeah, that's about it, really.
And he's only 22. People forget about that, but he's only 22. And the last time a player was that decisive in a World Cup was in 1958. I mean, someone that young. I mean, even younger. Pele was about 17 then. But usually, big players, they do their best World Cup by the age of 25, 26. So if you're being very pragmatic, you'd think that Neymar's World Cup would be Russia 2018, and this one would be Leo Messi's. But football can be very interesting, and bizarre things can happen. And although many people expected Ronaldinho and Kaká to be on the list just because they could take some pressure off Neymar, the fact that Scolari didn't bring them in also shows that he really believes Neymar can cope with the pressure. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can carry Brazil at least to the semifinals, because of course Brazilians want to win, and second is never good enough here because we're spoiled when it comes to football. But I suppose people have some realistic ideas just behind all the persona of, well, we're going to win this again. They know it's a young team, and that if they reach at least the semifinals and are hardworking enough, I'd say that they at least are going to be recognized as a reasonable team with good expectations for the next World Cup. Sorry, Sam.
Sorry, I think he'll rise to the task, but I think it could be dangerous to pin too much hope just on Neymar, as I think it always is in these kind of situations. I remember it was a similar sort of situation with Rooney for England back in, when was it? Was it 2004? And really, all of the expectations. Was it 2004? Yeah, it was 2004, and just really all of the expectations were pinned on him. Yeah, for the Euros. Yeah. And
sorry, go ahead. Sorry, you finish. Go ahead, Sam.
Sorry, can you say that again?
No, I thought you were done, but go ahead, and I'll chime in after you finish your thought.
No, I'm pretty much done. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that I would be concerned, even though, you know, Messi's probably at the stage where it should be his World Cup. I'd be concerned if it's his World Cup in Brazil because I don't want to see what happens if Argentina is the one that ends up winning this World Cup in Brazil in Maracanã Stadium.
Well, but there is a strong possibility because not only they are good at their football, they have the most friendly schedule of all, and they are not in a tough group. So,
they're not in a tough group. They don't play anyone difficult until quarterfinals. If they have a good if they have good luck, they don't play anyone with a reasonable chance of having at least one good player until the quarterfinals.
Yes, and they have problems at the back, but I think those problems can be fixed.
Flora, Brazilians tend. Sorry.
I would like to add one thing. It's not from one of the first players that you think about, but I would really like to see Paulinho bounce back from a subpar season in Tottenham. Because I think
hey, watch yourself there, Leo. Watch yourself there, Leo.
No, I'm not.
No, I totally agree with you. He started the season very well, and he's really slumped.
I'm not ditching anything in Tottenham. I'm telling you that Paulinho is a special player.
He really is.
I really like to see he bounce back from this season.
You guys predict Spain will be a strong contender in this World Cup also, or is Spain kind of fallen?
I really think they can do great things because they have this amazing group of players, and sometimes even when you are old and your legs aren't with you that much, in the World Cup, if the things click, they can do great things. But they are now. As we saw with Barcelona, they have problems. They are not at the best of their form. So I think they will have some problems, and they are in a tough group. I mean, Chile is a team that is can't be forgotten, and the Netherlands are always a team that pose some difficulties. So I think they have to watch the backs.
Shall we make a bet then?
Yeah, I think.
Let's make a bet for the World Cup final then, and then we pay a caipirinha. We get paid a caipirinha by everyone if we get it right. What do you say?
Yeah, sure.
I'm not good at bets at any sense, but I would be more than happy to buy some caipirinhas for you.
we let Flora pick first.
Oh man, I don't know. I'm assuming that Brazil's gonna make it to the final. I would love to see some surprise team make it. You know, I mean, I think that it would be interesting for it to be a team that hasn't won before, but that's always been a strong contender, like the Netherlands or like one of these other teams. But, you know, I've heard Germany has a good chance also of making it to the final. I'd have to see more in the group stages, like what would match up with what, but I think that without looking at it and without really thinking about it too hard, I could say probably Germany, Brazil in the final.
Okay. Leo?
Yeah, I think it will be Brazil and Argentina, and I hope that Brazil wins. But I'm not that kind of guy that would be really upset if Argentina wins. I'm not that. I don't have any kind of problem with that.
Me neither. Sam?
I'd probably have to say just I think probably either Brazil, Argentina or Germany, but if I've got to choose a dark horse, I would choose Belgium.
Okay, but we're picking different finals, so we have a better chance of getting paid the So Flora is going with Germany, Brazil. Leo is going with Brazil, Argentina, and you're going with?
I'm going to go with Germany, Brazil as well in the final, but like I say, Flora
has picked that already. You have to pick another one.
All right. In that
These
case,
are the perks of being the girl of the podcast.
well, one thing I will say, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be Brazil-England in the final. That's one thing I will say. But yeah.
No one picked Uruguay.
No, not nor Spain. I will pick a different final. I will pick Germany versus Argentina.
Wow, Brazil
Yeah.
completely out of the final.
Completely out of the final. But maybe for Russia, but not this time. But that's my impression. Because host nations they usually go at least to the semifinals. If they have enough tradition in football. Germany had a very average team in 2006, and they managed to go to the semifinals. Italy was even worse in 1990, and they reached the semifinals. It is a sort of a pattern in a way, but I would say Brazil gets to the semifinals with Germany, and Germany decides they've grown up after 4 years, and they can now reach a World Cup final.
I have a problem also with Germany as a pick. It is the team that I like that I like the most, but they have this World Cup will pose such a problem in this logistic department, and I'm not sure they will have what it takes to go to the end.
Mm-hmm. It could be.
Italy is worse than Germany for Italy, because Italy's they will have to cross Brazil every time they play, because
I'm so sorry for them.
They chose to base their squad in Rio, so they will travel Brazil all over. I mean, it will be terrible for Italy.
I'm so sorry for them. I'm very sorry. I mean, when Brazil played the World Cup in the U.S. In '94, I remember Brazil played Los Angeles, and then they had to go to Detroit, and then they had to go to Dallas, and they had to go back to Los Angeles. I mean, that's the World Cup, and I mean, you might play it in France and just take a train and go to the next city, or you play in a continental country. Russia chose to host to choose all the whole cities in their European part, so it's going to be short travel for them. But that doesn't stop. If China hosts the World Cup, it's going to be a national event as well. They're going to travel to loads of parts. If Australia hosts the World Cup, it will be the same.
I strongly agree with you. That's not the problem. I think the problem is that Italy chose poorly. So it's not about the size of the country. It's just, I mean, it is what it is. Brazil is big and wants to show its diversity. So it's a wonderful opportunity to that, as we already discussed.
Yeah. Let me ask you one question, Flora, about the World Cup perception in Brazil as compared to the Olympics. Because coming from the U.S., I suppose you get much more attention with the Olympic Games than you do with the World Cup. I suppose it's been rising. It's been a rising attention for the World Cup in the U.S., but the Olympics are they still bigger than the World Cup for Americans or not?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that the Olympics are definitely a huge event for Americans. I mean, in the United States, people follow both the Summer and Winter Olympics very closely. They're events that take up prime time, during the month. And, I remember just when Rio won the Olympic bid here, how big of a deal it was and how much of a game changer it was from that moment when Rio won the Olympics in comparison to when it won the World Cup, because there wasn't as much of a toss-up or competition for the World Cup. Brazil was pretty much the one that was going to get it, and I remember that you could feel sort of like Brazil evolving towards these preparations and towards being this country when it won the World Cup bid, but it was really when it won the Olympics in 2009 that all of a sudden the whole attention, the international media really started watching Brazil, and every single thing that would happen was a reflection of, will Brazil be ready for the World Cup and will Rio be ready for the Olympics? I mean, I remember that a few months after Rio won the bid, there was the helicopter got shot down in Morro dos Macacos, and then there was the blackout, and then there was a bunch of other problems and every single thing that would happen here that maybe 8 or 9 years ago would have been Brazilian news became international news. So I think that just with that alone, it shows that the Olympics is a bigger event internationally, but I do think that the FIFA World Cup is a bigger event in Brazil.
So it probably shows that the biggest scrutiny is about to come, isn't it?
Well, I think that the Olympic Committee and the Olympics itself have a double challenge, because I think that there is more attention that's put on the Olympics, and I think that there will be even under the microscope more because of everything that we're going to see during the World Cup, which really has nothing to do with the Olympic Committee itself, but because of any mistake, which I think, as we've discussed, we're predicting that there will be a few, but any mistake, any major problem that is reflected in this World Cup will then put that much more pressure on the Olympics for 2016. I think the benefit that they have is that they'll be able to centralize it to Rio. It won't be a national event, but I think that the blow that they took recently from somebody from their own organization calling it the worst organization that he's seen for an Olympic game, when John Coates came out with those comments, I think that was a heavy blow to the Olympic Committee, and I think that it's going to have to be something where there's going to be a lot of work ahead of them after the World Cup, because after the World Cup, it's all on them. Right now, every time we write about these things, every time we talk about it, we put both of them in the category. We always say, Brazil, the host of the World Cup, and Rio, the host of 2016. But once the World Cup is done, it's all going to be focused on the Olympics. Mm-hmm. So that's why I think it's going to have a lot of pressure for them. And, I think there would have been a lot of pressure regardless of the World Cup not being here. But just having both of the events back to back is going to make it a lot more scrutinized for the Olympics. And also, I think that because of all the stuff we saw happen during Sochi this year, and the way that social media and Twitter and all these other outlets of information that we all use to communicate our stories are now being used even for things like journalists complaining about their hotel accommodations and traffic and things like that. I think that by the time the 2016 Olympics come around, it's going to be a lot more powerful, and it's going to be something that they're going to have to watch out for.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Sam, do you have anything to add coming from London, which is the last Olympic city?
Only I will say that, well, I think traditionally Britain's always had like a stronger, well, obviously it's had a stronger Olympic team than Brazil, and there is a stronger Olympic tradition, but the World Cup is still bigger and it's more popular than the Olympics in London. I do believe that Brazil will get behind the Olympics. I do believe, especially after the World Cup, I think there's going to be like a rush of support. I mean, if you look at what's going on with the rugby in Rio, like Rugby Sevens just qualified quite recently to for the first time take part as an Olympic sport. Brazil won the right to enter a team. So in Rio right now particularly, and to a lesser extent Sao Paulo, actually probably about equally, you have there's a rush right now to get teams ready for the Rugby Sevens for the 2016 Olympics. Mm-hmm. And that's quite interesting. It's becoming quite a popular sport. It's growing quite rapidly. So it'd be interesting to see if.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Sorry, some noise.
Yeah.
So no worries. So it'll be interesting to see if we have growth in other sports as well. I believe that. There's going to be several new water-based sports in this Olympics. It'll be interesting to see if they get some extra attention. But it'll be interesting to see the legacy that's left afterwards as well in terms of these new sports.
Of course.
Well, I think it'll also be interesting to see what Brazilian talent comes out of these new sports and of having the Olympics here, of just kind of Brazilians and younger Brazilians taking advantage of these sports, coming here to maybe see if there is new talent that's born out of this that becomes Brazilian talent, and that ends up being a legacy where Brazil could have a big presence in the Olympics beyond volleyball and beyond soccer, where we could see maybe more swimmers like Cesar Cielo, or like more gymnasts and more people kind of competing in these other sports where Brazilians should be able to thrive.
Yeah, Brazil's pretty much between 15th and 30th in the last Olympics, and it's basically because of team sports and random talents that come every now and then, such as Cesar Cielo or the boxers, which were really great during the London Olympics. Artur Zanetti. I always confuse him with the Inter Milan player. Artur Zanetti, the guy who does the rings in the gymnastic competitions. So Brazil doesn't have much of Brazil doesn't have much of an Olympic tradition. We basically care about team sports, and that has to change until the Olympics come. Not only for the sake of getting medals, but also for the fact Brazil needs to engage the population with more sportsmen, and just having the teams involved with this won't be enough to get Rio 2016 enough engagement for it to be successful.
But at the same time, when you talk about Zanetti, we are talking about a sport that received a major boost of financial boost in the last year. So it was kind of already an Olympic plan going on. But at the same time, as we already told people here that listen our podcast, in 2007, when we had the Pan American Games, people loved the games. It was 2 weeks that people really loved to watch each and every sport, and and then they, as soon as that, forgot everything about that. There was no legacy at all. If you talk about a person, do you remember the 2007 Pan American Games? I won't be surprised if no one remembers a thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Should we move on?
Yeah, I think we should. That was a really good conversation.
It was.
There is one thing I like to add.
Please
do you know that Americans are only behind Brazil in interest about the ticketing of the World Cup?
That's controversial.
Oh, okay.
And I would say the reason because the way they measure the interest for tickets, it's basically where you buy them and where you're based.
Oh, I see.
The US was already number 2 in South Africa, but not by such a big margin comparing to the UK, if I'm not mistaken, which was 3rd. But the thing is that there are not only Brazilians coming to Brazil and buying their tickets in the US because they live there, but also major sponsors buy their tickets from the US as well. So that counts. So that counts as a part of the equation. Of course, there's rising interest in the US, but it's a little more complex.
Oh yeah, but that's sure one good explanation.
But that's a good point. Should we go to the Elo scandal?
Yes, I think we do have to go to that. And I don't know if you. I don't think you have. I don't think we have to mention that much. Your post. I think we have to mention it, but I don't know if we have to.
There's no need. There's no need because there's a whole post there, and they can read the post if they want. What I was going to ask, and if you guys agree with that, is basically to ask the foreigners about their impressions on our elite, because you and I we agree with most of that, and we have similar views.
Exactly.
But it pays. That's good. So let's go to the final one then. So finally, for the evening, we're talking about the Elos jeans scandal. Basically, because Elos, the jeanswear, they put out a new shirt which had a message. They put out a new shirt with a message which was down with this underdeveloped Brazil, and it didn't sound very well for many Brazilians. It sounded fine for some of them, but to my perception, it raises a point of how out of touch our elite is with our country. And I would like to ask Flora and Sam, as foreigners, when you come to Brazil and you meet people who are in the very 1%, the crème de la crème, how do you see them, and do you think that they are engaged with the country?
I'd have to say probably not at all. Often they idolize places like Miami, they idolize American things like American music, and quite often have an open disdain for things that are uniquely Brazilian. I'm not saying that you have to love everything from your country. I don't love everything that's British. I don't love all British music. But I also think it's quite strange at the same time not to have such an open disdain. I also think it's quite strange at the same time to have such an open disdain of things for your country.
I see. Flora, do you have anything to add?
I think that the Brazilian nationalism issue kind of comes and goes away because obviously in the phase that we're entering now during the World Cup is the moment where you see everybody with their yellow jerseys in the street and you see everybody with their Brazil flags and you see everybody with this pride of being Brazilian, maybe not with all the controversy that's come out recently, but I mean, I think that right now, if you measure the nationalism and the sort of sense of nationalism, it's the lower classes that are probably less behind what was typically the nationalism during World Cup season than the high class. I mean, I think that you'll still have a lot more elite Brazilians that will be able to go to the games, that will be wearing their jerseys, that are probably renting apartments and making money. And I think that you're going to see it with the lower classes where they're not going to be the ones that are going to be rallying behind the football and behind the national team as they usually would have during other World Cup seasons. And I know that we're kind of getting away from the World Cup discussion and going into something else, but I think that that's an interesting reflection also of measuring nationalism in terms of how it's going to be expressed and how it's usually been expressed in the past.
Mm-hmm. Just a second.
I mean, I think that with this Ellis thing specifically, I was looking at because after I read your post, and I thought that your post was very interesting, but I read this letter that the company or the designer, that Tim Ellis, or the Chimi Ellis, that they put out afterwards. And I think that I don't agree with the way that they did it and with the wording that they chose, but I think that it was very much from what I interpreted from this letter about the difficulties that they're having specifically for their industry because of the way Brazilian bureaucracy works, just because of the way that Brazilian bureaucracy works and the difficulties of just importing and exporting certain materials and of being able to get certain things done within the way that the infrastructure in Brazil kind of slows things down just for commercial and for production reasons. But again, I don't think that they chose the right wording for that T-shirt. But when I read through this letter, it seems like it was a bit of a kind of like the designers bitching that they probably didn't have their collection ready on time for Sao Paulo Fashion Week because of something being held up in Alfândega or something. I mean, I don't know if that's what happened, but I'm just giving an example of what could have provoked this.
Let me just ask one thing to Sam. Was the noise a problem? The back.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, can you give me a second, because I really can't do anything otherwise. I'll get just spanked by my mother, although I'm 32, and I've made signs and she didn't understand it, and she looked as if whenever I'm in silence, she thinks I'm not speaking, and she really doesn't get it.
Well, it is Mother's Day. I guess you have
it is. And what can I do on Mother's Day? I'm so sorry, but please just give me. She's making some tea, which is kind of shaming, and I'm in the kitchen because there's no other place of the room of the house I can be in. Sorry.
Sabe, você não pode cortar o microfone nessa hora?
No, I wish I could, because the thing is with a. Well, let me try one other feature of this and see if this works. Just a second. It's the control room or something. Let me see.
Alguém ouvindo alguma coisa?
Or
Ok.
Hello, 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 hello.
Hello.
It works. So keep talking. I'll shut myself down.
okay.
Do you need me to repeat what I said, or did you get what I said okay?
No,
If
I
you,
think we got what you said. Okay, yeah.
oh
Okay.
yeah,
Sam, o que eu peguei da Flora tinha perdido um pedaço de som também, não? Foi um
I
problema
think
comigo?
I think there was loads of noise here. If you could repeat part of that, that would be good. I'll shut
Yeah.
myself down.
Okay. Maybe start it from the letter that you discovered.
Okay. Um, yeah, no, so what I was saying, like in the Ellis jeans controversy, I think that the wording that they chose for the T-shirt was not the best wording because it does sort of promote this kind of sense of elitism and like trying to talk down to lower class or to things that they consider underdeveloped. But I think that at the base of the whole protest was more a complaint over bureaucracy and over the way that institutions and that systems make it difficult just for production. I think that specifically this was for the fashion industry, that they probably had some difficulty with their presentation of their spring summer collection at Sao Paulo Fashion Week because of some problems with Brazilian bureaucracy. So when I read this letter, it seemed more targeted towards like the things that they were referring to in terms of the atraso or the atrasado or the things that they felt were behind. It seemed more directed towards corruption and towards bureaucracy and towards like complaining that there's not enough hospitals and that there's nothing that works in traffic and that things just don't flow. Like the thing that they kind of repeated is like as coisas não fluem, so the things that don't flow. So I imagine just from not knowing the details and not knowing the inner workings of this whole thing, I imagine that there must have been things that just made it difficult for them as, as I guess artists and as like commerce and business people to be able to put together their clothing line because of just the way that things in Brazil, because of the way that institutions are set up, because of bureaucracy, because of all the paperwork and documentation, and because of things getting stuck in ports and not being liberado by the Polícia Federal in the airports. Like, I think that that was probably a lot of the base of their protest for coming out with this T-shirt. Again, I don't think the wording was the right way to do it, and I don't think that the way that they presented it probably. But once I read this letter, it kind of changed a bit of the perspective that I thought of them kind of talking down to people.
If I may jump in, I would say that there is a problem with the wording, but there is also a matter with the timing. Just because this is just before the World Cup, which is surrounded by problems and preparations, and this is also an election year. I'd like to get your insights on that as well. Do you feel that the Brazilian elite, the people you've talked to, are they politically engaged or not?
Is this for me specifically, or is it for everybody in general?
It could be you or Sam. It's fine.
I think that there's so many people that seem, and especially a lot of people from the Brazilian elite that seem unsatisfied or dissatisfied with the BT and with the Lula legacy and then the Dilma government, that I think that they're trying to look for a change. I don't think that it's going to happen this year. I still believe that Dilma is most likely going to win re-election. It might have to be in a runoff, but I do feel like there is. I don't think that they're completely disengaged from politics, but I do think that they're not necessarily campaigning for Aécio Neves either. It's more of a fed up with the PT for a lot of the impressions I've gotten from some people from the middle upper classes, that it's just more fed up with the PT but I don't think that they're necessarily thrilled with the opposition either, if that makes sense.
It surely does.
Can you say? Could you say? Sorry, could you say the last bit again? There was some interference. You said they're not exactly, and it cut out when you were talking about the opposition. So could you just say that again?
I think that there is a sense of dissatisfaction from
Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yes. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Hello?
Yeah. Is it coming in clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
All right, perfect. No,
yeah, it's coming in good, yeah.
I think that there is some sense of satisfaction from maybe the middle upper class with the PT government and with the Dilma government, but I don't necessarily think that they're rallying behind Aécio Neves at this point either. So I don't know if that's created a sense of maybe political apathy of what you were referring to, Mauricio, but I think that maybe once the World Cup is done and once we start seeing these campaigns kick off, there may be some more activity and there may be some more support and we might see more of a race than I think that we're seeing at this point. Even with Dilma going down in the polls, I still think that she'll most likely win the elections, even if it's in a runoff. Because I think that more what I've seen is kind of the middle upper class Brazilians who are still more leftist, that because they're not such fans of Aécio and because they're not too happy with Dilma, are going to put their votes in Marina and Eduardo Campos. And seeing, especially because of Eduardo Campos having Marina on her ticket, that a lot of maybe like middle upper class Brazilians kind of feel like they could just put their vote there, knowing probably that it won't count towards electing these two people, but not having to put it with Dilma or with Aécio Neves either.
That makes sense. Sam, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll say that. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, of course, and I certainly agree with Flora's points. But I would say probably the real richest Brazilians that I've met, and obviously the children of the richest that I've met, were in fact completely politically disengaged and didn't really know anything that was going on in their own country, and to a certain extent as well, didn't actually care. Yeah, I would say to a certain extent that the real elite of the elite, at least probably the richest and the most elite of the elite in those terms that I've met, I would probably say were really quite politically unaware, quite politically disengaged, and really didn't care less, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that comes from quite limited experience being a freelance journalist. You don't often tend to meet elites that often at the real top of the elite file, but and possibly that's quite a good thing. But I would say, and I'm speaking in particular from one experience from one girl that I went out with briefly, actually. But yeah, yeah.
That's very in-depth knowledge. That's good. That's really good. I didn't need to make that joke, but that's fine. Did we discuss that enough?
That's good. I think we can go for a little bit longer. I definitely agree with Flora's points regarding the kind of middle class and perhaps upper middle class and the kind of disaffection with regards to the PT, but also kind of also an open disaffection for Aécio Neves, perhaps. People that were quite big fans of Fernando Henrique Cardoso, but don't see in Aécio Neves what they saw in Fernando Henrique.
I don't know if you have that take as well, but my impression is that the Brazilian elite, as if I can call them, just as if it were a gigantic cluster of people. They divide between actually two groups. One of them which is reasonably politically engaged, so they're going with Aécio Neves or they're going with Eduardo Campos, and I mean they are anti-PT or they have very anti-leftist positions. They're very conservative, social conservatives at least. And there's another big chunk of it which actually doesn't care at all, and they tend to think that their success is based on their personal skills and the things they develop themselves, and not exactly on what's the tax system, what's the tax code, or how much can I pay to one of my employees. They just don't care many times. I don't know if that's the impression you have, but the most I talk to people who are in the 1% of on the top of Brazil in a way. It feels as if they are pretty much against all politicians, not necessarily for Aécio Neves or for Dilma or for Eduardo Campos. Sometimes they channel that frustration in the opposition, but that doesn't mean necessarily they believe much that the opposition is going to bring such and such change. It's basically to say, well, I don't like you and I want you out. I'll put someone else in your place, and then in a few years' time, I'll take them out as well. Does that make any sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
I could
lost.
ask one last question about Brazilian elite. No, can you listen?
Yeah, I did. I had lost you for
Hi.
a minute. You disconnected for 2 seconds, but I can hear you now.
Oh, good. So I was going basically to ask one final question about Brazil's elite, the ones you've gotten in touch with, and this is something that Brazilians feel about people who are very rich. Were they ashamed to be rich? Were they ashamed to be rich?
No, I think almost quite. Hello?
Hello. Sorry, I think I didn't put the question properly, and there was an interruption in my transmission. Let me ask again. Do you, as foreigners and talking to very rich people every now and then, did you have the impression that the rich people of Brazil are kind of shy in saying they are rich, because since this is a very unequal country and loads of poverty around, some of them do feel a little shy about talking about all the things they have. Did you sense that as well?
Sorry, Mauricio, can you go with that question again? There was some interference, sorry.
No problem. I think it's me. Just a second. Just take this from here. Coming to the final part. Can you listen to me well?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear
Okay.
you.
So I'll pose the question again. I'll pose the question again. You guys as foreigners, talking to very rich people in Brazil, or to rich people in Brazil if they're not very rich, did you have the impression that you're kind of shy about talking about their wealth? This is something that Brazilians usually say, that there are no rich people here. There's just upper middle class, that they don't like to be seen as very rich in a country where you have so much poverty and where people have a very bad treatment from the system itself. Do you have the impression that the rich don't like to be seen as rich in Brazil?
Sam, hello?
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hello?
Hey, could you listen to what I said?
I heard
Yeah,
the question.
we've got all kinds of troubles here.
Is it Sam?
We've got all kinds of troubles with the lines here. Yeah, let's go.
I'll go again.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Leo?
Leo.
I'm just with
Hello,
my
can you
mic
hear me
cut.
okay?
I cut my mic when I'm not talking.
Oh, that's good. So everyone, so I'll pose the question again, and we're finishing. So, Flora, Sam, you as foreigners and talking to very rich people in Brazil every now and then, do you have the impression they are shy about their wealth? Because this is something Brazilians usually notice, that rich don't like to be seen as rich. They like to refer to themselves as upper middle class. Do you get that sense as well, or not?
Flo, do you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, I think, most of my experience with the upper middle class has been in cities like Sao Paulo and in Rio. And I think that they're both major cities where I think that for a long time the people might have been hiding their wealth for security concerns, and where people might have hid their wealth because of the obvious social disparity that exists in both of these cities. But I also think that there's a tendency of groups, especially the super rich, to to move in a very specific bubble and to move in a very specific group of people and go to specific areas where they know who they will be seen with and who they will see, and where they kind of know that they could almost, I guess, be themselves if they are super rich, because everybody around them is kind of in the same boat. Hello?
Sorry, the line's falling apart. Could you say that again? Hello?
Sure,
I think that the line's falling apart. Sorry, could you say that again?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Like it completely cut out.
Okay, from the whole thing?
Yeah,
or
please. Like it completely cuts out.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah. I think there's a bad delay at my end.
Okay, so if for whatever reason it cuts out, just let me know and I'll stop. Okay?
Sure thing.
All right. I think that my experience or my contact more with the middle upper class of Brazil has been in cities like Sao Paulo and Rio, where I think that for a long time there was and continues to be a security concern if you do overexpose or overshow your wealth. In Rio and in Sao Paulo, you have some people that drive like expensive cars like BMW and Mercedes, but you definitely see it a lot less than you see it in cities like Miami or Los Angeles or even New York, which doesn't have that many cars, but where you see the wealth show off their wealth a lot more, because I don't think that there is as much of a risk or as much of a concern of exposing yourself as wealth and exposing yourself to possible personal harm and security.
Sorry, it's cutting out.
Okay. Do you want to maybe go first?
Sorry, there's a bad.
But I think what she said is Sam. Hello.
Yeah.
So I'm the one who has the transmission. So I'm the one who has the transmission. So when I stop, since I'm hearing, I suppose what she's saying is basically recorded.
Hello?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's recorded. Yeah.
I agree.
So that's fine. So that's fine.
Heard everything she said.
Yeah. So that's fine. It's probably your connection, Sam. So don't worry. Flora, I guess we got most of what you said. Do you have any closing thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I think that one of the last things I was saying, that I think that especially in these two cities, that I think that the wealthiest people in these two cities have a tendency to move in pretty small groups and to stick to a pretty small bubble of areas and of people that they interact with on a regular basis. And I think that when they're in this comfort zone, that there isn't that fear of showing off the wealth.
That makes a lot of sense. I think is this good for the discussion, Sam? Because we've got loads of material now, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I just have to agree with Flora's points as well. I think there's probably like two worlds that these people exist in. There's the public world and the private world, and I think for various reasons, particularly like security-related reasons, in the public sphere, I think people are quite conservative about showing off their wealth. Whilst I think in the private sphere, I think people are quite happy to show it off. Yeah.
That's very good. Shall we wrap it up?
Sure.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, that's good. So that's it for this. So that's it. So that's it for this.
I miss Gafieira Elite though.
Oi? Okay. That's it for this week then. Thanks to our guest.
I was adding that I miss Gafieira Elite.
Okay. That's all right. So let me wrap it up. That's it for this week. Thanks to our... Should I mention all the guests or not, Sam? Because it's not in the script, but should I? Hello.
Sam?
Maurício, eu acho que você pode agradecer a Flora.
Eu vou agradecer a todos vocês. Então, vamos lá.
Tá.
So that's it for this week. Thanks to all our guests, Flora Charner, Leonardo Macario, and Sam Cowie, our producer. You've been listening to the Brazil Podcast. This week, I'll leave you with Pra Que Discutir com Madame? You've been listening to the Brazil Podcast. This week, I'll leave you with Pra Que Discutir com Madame, a song by Haroldo Barbosa. Is that all right, Sam?
Okay, we're good.
Good. So I'll just end the